recap of Andrew Flynn and Kane Francis at England's Strongest Man. In this video, we're going to look at how Andrew Flynn and Kane Francis both performed at England's Strongest Man. We're going to look at their training in the build-up and then what their off-season, what their plans before Britain's next year is going to look like. So event one was the deadlift ladder, and it was quite cool for me to watch because in the deadlift ladder, it was indeed Kane against Andrew. Kane went out of the blocks flying. First two bars, rapid reps. Little slow down on that third bar at 360 where he ramped, and then a little bit more of a slow rep at 380 because he had to revert to the hitch. Andrew though was pretty seamless all the way through. He set a nice consistent pace, and I think even he said he surprised himself with the 380 because that is currently his 1RM. Obviously looking at that, I think his 1RM is probably between 400 and 410. He's not the kind of athlete to max out or really chase 1RMs in the gym or need to know where he's at. He will warm up, he will do the event, and then he will adapt as he goes. But that was a great showing for both of them. I think Andrew was 4th and Kane 6th in that first event. Second event was the 200 kilo shield carry. The difference between the two athletes that I coach here are the limbs, torso, and different lengths. So if you look at Kane, he can't quite get his arms around and interlock his fingers. The athletes that did best on this, off the top of my head, namely Paddy, Ben Glasscock and Andrew Flynn, they were all able to get some sort of purchase with their fingers, whereas Kane had to hold it purely in his biceps. So Kane did the first length quite quickly, then you see the shield starts to drop, and then he was probably 2 meters away from, I think, Paul Smith, which would have got him a few more points, but a fantastic effort from him. Andrew Flynn, you'll notice he does a 3 lengths, 60 meters, turns around, sees where Paddy is, and then stops. There was no point chasing Paddy for that extra point in his mind at that time. Obviously, as things transpired, this obviously worked against him, but such is life. But he felt really, really good. The biggest game changer on that event is being able to interlock your fingers. So it's something that we're going to struggle with Kane in the future, but we have a shield now at my gym, so it may be something we can try and adapt for him. Next event was the yoke. Kane calls this one of his banker events along with stones. It's one of those events he doesn't need to train all that often. In actual fact, he only trained it twice in the lead up to this. He did have a drop, but it didn't cost him and he still got the win, which shows you exactly where his performance on the yoke is. He's obviously one of the best yoke runners in the world. With Andrew, we weren't expecting him to drop it. That is an uncharacteristic mistake from him, but he felt his core go that little bit. It was probably lucky that he was able to save himself on the shield a little bit because he didn't max out that event whatsoever, but that little drop cost him because Paddy overtook him and had a nice clean run. That's what costs you, especially in a 20-meter yoke race. If you drop it, you're going to lose momentum and time, and often you're going to drop points. So after doing the 1,000-pound yoke over 20 meters, they moved on to a 150 kilo log, where the athletes were facing each other as they were repping out with the referee just to the side. Now, this is what affected Kane ever so slightly on that first rep. So Kane did 6 reps, but had 1 disallowed because he didn't quite have it under control. It was definitely a good call from Rob Frampton. But one of the things Kane was not able to adapt to immediately was the ceiling. It was throwing off, he told me, his balance. So it's affecting his vestibular system. So what we discussed moving forward is when he has the time before going out or before the event is starting, he's probably got up to 2 minutes where he can do what I call grounding. So he can look up at the ceilings and he can do all these different eye drills that we already do in training to help ground himself in that little space before the event. So Kane, as he said in the competition to the commentator or to the MC, his best at 150 was previously 5 reps. He had 6 allowed, with a 7th one quite possible. So his overhead has come on leaps and bounds. His positioning has much improved through all the mobility work we've been doing. He's still got a way to go, but I keep telling him, A 200 kilo log should be the minimum standard because he's got such big shoulders and pressing power and big triceps. The only thing that holds him back is his shoulder mobility. It's like a handbrake going on. You can see as it reaches lockout and he puts his head through, that's literally the hardest bit for him at the moment. Andrew Flynn, I said in one of my videos that it looked like we'd at least got some headway on his forearm issue. Now we have, but it's going to need longer. Luckily, we're going to be moving into an off season. But he was able to hide it pretty well, as a lot of athletes do. A lot of this is top athletes do. Top athletes, they're so good at compensating and hiding issues. So although his log looked pretty smooth, and 150 kilos again for 6 reps is probably a big old PB for Andrew. But he told me afterwards that his forearm from rep 3 was on fire and affecting him massively. So he did really well to get 6 reps. Again, a 7th rep on that for either Kane or Flynn would have been a game changer in terms of points, because the amount of people that split points on 6 reps. Final event was sandbag steeplechase, which is very much the flavour of the year at the moment. It's a popular event and it's a nice take on a loading medley. I do like it. Again, Kane and his sandbag attempts, he doesn't need a lot of training on them, although we did push them quite hard. He did, I think, 10 kilos lighter than the sandbag medley in around 32 seconds in his final training session here at my gym, and ended up with a time of around 36. Not many mistakes there. Just needs to get back to his full strength and full speed. As he said in his interviews, that he suffered on his foot speed compared to Ben, who was just in front of him and managed to load that last one before him. But a solid showing and coming 3rd overall. Looking at those times, looking at Ben's time, Kane's time, knowing that Paddy had won at Brits and was likely to be able to put in a good performance unless he made a mistake, that was the right amount of athletes to get in between Andrew and Paddy, because obviously whoever won that was probably going to be the champion. So looking at that, I knew it was close. I didn't know it was 0.12 seconds. So Kane being 0.12 seconds quicker than Andrew meant that Andrew dropped from that 1st place position into 2nd place. Obviously we are happy with that. Looking at Andrew's performance on that, he goes with a vertical pick because he can get off and going quicker. The problem you get, and you might not be aware of, is those mirror fit bags on the outside say 150 kilos, on the inside they were loaded with 140 kilos. What that means is there's some slack. It's a bit loose. It makes the sandbag a bit floppy. So when Andrew grabbed that first bag with that vertical pickup, the whole sandbag dropped down, which meant he had to work hard to keep it close to him. He had to squeeze even harder than normal, and then had to extend even more to get it over the yoke. So that's something we need to work on. We need to work on obviously the sideways pick. In all honesty, Andrew, I know, was extremely happy with 2nd place, although he would have wanted to win, and Kane was over the moon with 3rd place. But let's look at their training and their build up into how they got to the comp. Let's start with Andrew's build-up. So Andrew was recently back off Worlds before England's build-up. I think he had 9 weeks between when he got back from Worlds and then when the England's final was. And he told me that was his focus, that was his priority. As I said in the previous video, UK's wasn't a priority for him in terms of programming. So all we did was focus on just the England events. We did this with a Norwegian block. Andrew's very adaptable. He understands the need for certain phases where we have volume, like the Norwegian, and then certain phases where we have more intensity, a bit more rock and roll with the conjugate and a bit more peaking. But after the peak of Worlds, I didn't want to throw him straight back into another conjugate. I wanted to do a volume phase with the longer term goal being taken into account. Andrew would be the first to say his build up was not perfect by any means. He had a few stresses, the main one being the forearm issue. We've got to the bottom of it now. We know what to do to move forward, but he needs a little bit of a deload to bounce back from that. So that's what we're going to be doing next with Andrew. Andrew's next goal in terms of off-season. So last off-season, we continued to improve the deadlift, but we put a massive emphasis on the Atlas stones. This off-season, one of the main things I want him to build up and improve is going to be his strict pressing. It's going to help him immensely with all the different implements. It's definitely, in terms of predictor lifts, it is behind the percentage that I would want, which is 85% of his push press. So we need to bring that up. That is the biggest glaring error, glaring issue, bar the forearm and also grip work. Other than that, we're going to use different speed and reactive techniques just to keep him ticking over with his events, but give him some novel stimulus to train for and push, rather than just the monotony of clean and press log, clean and press axle, clean and jerk, monster dumbbell. Along with the help of his nutritionist Max McCall, we're going to tie in a little bit of fat loss with the overview. But between now and Brits, there are no planned competitions. So if he gets a call up to a Giants Live or something major, he'll probably give it a nod. Other than that, we have a nice long off season to help him peak for Brits in 2026. Moving on to Kane and how he got there. As many of you know, he tore his adductor completely off his pelvis in one position, I think adductor magnus, but then he had partial tear in adductor brevis and partial tear, I believe, in a hip flexor. Bottom line is, Kane was bedbound. He was essentially not able to move for a very long period of time. So it's taken a very long road to recovery. The final block before England's, we never even planned to do England's. All I wanted to do was get him through a rehab phase, get him to hit certain targets with regards to Copenhagen planks and the like. Once he hit those, we put him into Norwegian phase and just slowly got him through some slow tempo work, then some eccentric tempo work. And then we were able to get him into what I call a base building conjugate. So in the back of my mind, that was the next step for him. We did all the rehab work. We can now peak him. He was looking in good shape. He was passing everything. He had no pain, no issues. We just had to slowly ramp him up. Halfway through, or maybe halfway through the first phase, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, he messaged me saying, what do you think about England's? Because he did still have the spot because he was the reigning champ. And I wanted to put it off as long as possible. So my goal was, let's get to week 6 and then we'll consider it. Got to week 6, he was in good shape, he was kicking on, he was motivated, he wanted to give it a crack. So we adapted the program in terms of which events we were doing. It did have log in there, so we didn't have to change that much, but the movement events we did have to change and cater for the England's prep. So in essence, he had 6 weeks to peak. 6 weeks out, he didn't have a huge amount of momentum in certain things, like his deadlift wasn't peaking. This was due to holidays and obviously just getting back into the swing of things with regards to his training. So 6 weeks out, I would have told you no chance is he going to get onto the podium. It's way too competitive. That was one of the most competitive Englands I've ever seen. Such a plethora of great athletes in the whole lineup. As Kane got into his peak, we're talking 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out, he was just getting stronger and stronger and looking better and better. His peak and the momentum he built is some of the best I've seen of any athlete. So, end of week 2, I turned to Mitch Flowers, one of his training partners, and said, he can win this. Absolutely, he can win this. Winning for Kane, though, was being able to turn up and put in at least a good performance and know he's back to his best. To be 3.5, 4 points off of Paddy, who just finished 5th at Worlds, and then obviously 3 points back from Andrew, who was also at Worlds, with a massive rehab phase, no huge peak, was a sign of what's to come from Kane. So with Kane in the off season, he's got 3 main goals. He needs to kick on. He needs to get his maximal strength back up. So with deadlift, we want to peak this, but I want to peak it without hitching. That's the reason he didn't finish high in that deadlift medley. The hitching is holding him back. He has a habit of ramping. He can talk about his limb lengths all he wants. He does not need to hitch these weights. I believe he can get to over 1,000 pounds with a clean lift. If he can do that, these deadlift medleys, he'll be able to pull straight through. Right now, he needs the ability in terms of technique. He also needs the confidence to know that he can continually pull through. So we're not going to allow any hitching or ramping in his training whatsoever. And we didn't allow it in any of the build-up. He did a 370 clean pull in my gym just before, so 2 weeks out from England. We want to continue log. And then one of the biggest things I've actually challenged him is overhead squat in terms of mobility. I don't need him to go above a 20 kilo bar, but I need him to be able to perform that movement. If he can perform an overhead squat to what I call a 9 out of 10 quality, I know that pretty much all of his joints are in good working order in terms of mobility. I sent these goals to him. He sent a message back saying, well, log 200 and deadlift 1,000 pounds, it seems easy. The hardest one of those is going to be the overhead squat. So it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on with that. Other than that, you're just going to see Kane peak the rest of this year. We're going to push him hard, and he's going to come into Brits looking to win that title in 2026.